Hello YouTube. I'm going to keep it nice and simple, straight to the point. This video is going to show you how to do the Tri-Brigade combo. Personally, I am running Tri-Brigade Zoo, but again, this works just fine for pure Tri-Brigade. I do very much like the Tri-Zoo variant. If you're in a rush and just want to see a specific part, because I am going to be showing the one card combo, what to do if you're going second, like how to break a board and finish off the game, what to do if you have an absolutely horrendous hand or get interrupted, and what the Zoodiacs are for. So just really basic things and a bit more complicated things. So I think it'll be fine if you're just learning the deck for the first time, or if you have a bit of experience. I do go kind of fast in the video because I don't really want to waste anyone's time, and the first version of this video ended up being like 50 minutes. So if you need any further explanation, seriously, just drop the question in the comments and I'll gladly give it as in-depth explanation. I've been having a lot of fun playing Master Duel. I'm more than happy to do it, and I really just want to help people learn this deck because it's a lot of fun. So I am going to show the deck real quick just so you can get an idea of what I am working with. I will give a deeper explanation at the end, so if you only care about the deck list and why I'm running this, skip right to the end. And before you're intimidated by the one Lightning Storm and the one Solemn Judgment, I would prefer if these were Solemn Strikes, but again, the game came out kind of recently and they're URs, so they're a little bit expensive, and these are still good. So I'll hop right into it. Alright, so here I'm going to show off the one card combo. All you need is one card in your hand, and you can end on the very generic, very standard Tri-Brigade board. This is what you always typically want to be able to end your first turn on, and it's going to be one Appaloosa and one Revolt. Doesn't sound very strong, but with hand traps in hand, with other spells to interact, it's an extremely strong board. It's extremely consistent. It's not the best board in the game, and it's why a lot of people laughed at Tri-Brigade when it was first getting announced before it got all of its power cards, because they were like if you're just going to end on one Appaloosa negate and one disruption, what are you doing? Everything in the meta could do something better, but this deck has proven time and time again that it's extremely consistent, and this board is more than enough to take tons and tons of games and be a top tier contender. So since I'm not sure a lot of the people who would be watching this video, if anybody does watch this, wouldn't be super familiar with Tri-Brigade in general, or maybe with certain aspects of the game, I am going to highlight it in a way to make it very obvious, and this is going to be the slowest explanation, so if you just want a quicker cut explanation, go ahead, and I have the timestamps to the other parts, but I will put up above what you need. To start the combo, you need the card Fractal. And Fractal can also be found with the card Fire Formation Tanky. So both of these cards enable the one card combo to begin. So we're going to go ahead and grab Fractal, and it's always going to be the same chain of events, and it's why I'm showing them here in a nice clear image. Fractal is going to use his effect in hand to send himself to the graveyard, and all the Tri-Brigades have the same basic two effects. In graveyard, they help you activate another Tri-Brigade, and on the field, they can banish cards to special summon another Beast Warrior or Winged Beast from your extra deck while skipping the main requirements and using the graveyard material as fodder. So it's always going to be Fractal, into Kit, into Nerval, into either Keras or Fractal. This one's more situational, but typically it's going to be Keras. So I'm going to go ahead and run through it while I do it, while I give a better explanation of it. So here we're going to go ahead and grab that one card starter, treat ourselves to something nice, just because Fractal's so good. So then we're going to use Fractal. Down on that chain of events, he lets us send another Tri-Brigade to the graveyard. We're going to send our girl Kit. Kit's going to kick in with a similar effect now that she's in the graveyard, and she, again, much like Fractal, is going to let you send a card to the graveyard. Difference is, hers only triggers in the graveyard. We're going to send Nerval. Nerval kicks in using that same Tri-Brigade classic ability, but instead of sending a card to the graveyard, he lets us draw one to our hand, and we're going to grab our Fractal if we already have Keras in hand, which we do, or we're going to add Keras just to scare our opponent, and they're going to think that we can extend our plays, because Keras is a bit of an outlier. He's the odd one out. Instead of having an effect in the graveyard, he can special summon himself from hand by, I grabbed the wrong card because I was talking, but he can special summon himself from hand by giving up another card in hand, sacrificing another card in hand. That's a beast. So we're going to go ahead, and I typically like to summon the name that isn't Keras because it intimidates our opponents. We're going to use that other Tri-Brigade effect I talked about and banish just two. You always want to banish Kit and Nerval for these first two banishes. After this, it doesn't matter what you banish, but try to avoid banishing your links because you will use them for access code. Anyways, we're going to banish these two, and we're going to bring out Fairjit. Fairjit, the Barren Blossom, has an effect where she can special summon a card from your hand, and if at any point you're interrupted, you could just use Karas's effect to summon himself from hand and do this. But instead, we're going to go ahead and use her effect to summon him because that way we don't have to pay the price. Then here, we're going to go ahead and link off again into Bearbrum, this time using our Fairjit and using the name we already used. Remember, Tri-Brigades are once per turn for both their effects, so we don't want to send the card we haven't used yet to the graveyard. And in this case, since we already used Nerval, he's going to be the link material. We're going to link off, and Fairjit's second effect is going to kick in too, which lets us draw a card just to fix our hand. But also, it's going to lock you into only using beasts for your link summons and special summons for the rest of the turn. This normally doesn't matter in the slightest, and if you're playing just normal Tri-Brigade, you don't have to worry about this effect. So now we're going to go ahead and use Karas's effect, banish 2 again. And again, at this point, it doesn't really matter what you banish, but we're going to go ahead, and here, ideally, you would bring out a second Fairjit, but since I'm running the double Dragon Lords version, and I gave up an extra deck spot for a different card, I'm going to go ahead and just sacrifice him. I'm not going to get value from his effect. Just be very careful. Do not summon Bearbrum here if you're running more than one under any circumstances, because Apollousa requires different names. So then here, we're going to go ahead and summon Apollousa. And again, I'm going through this fast and not bored, but if you have any questions, please ask me in the comments. Here, Bearbrum's effect is also going to go off, so be very careful when summoning Apollousa here. Don't try to get fancy, don't try to do anything weird, and you do want to use everything because Apollousa is just stronger with the 3 negates. It's worth giving up a mediocre monster on the board. But Bearbrum lets us search the Revolt from our deck, but also to be careful about, once the Bearbrum is linked off, she's gonna lock you into just summoning Tri-Brigade. So if for some reason you link off Bearbrum first, you're no longer gonna be able to summon Apollousa, access code, or anything. So here the Revolt's the most important card in our hand. We're just gonna get rid of something random. I like keeping the hand trap. I should have gotten rid of the Tri-Brigade because Disruption's more important here, but I was talking. And then we're going to end up on this iconic board. The board that was laughed at. The board that has won tournament time and time again. But it's going to be Apollousa with 3 negates. And it's going to be Tri-Brigade Revolt. I'm just realizing that it's actually the second turn because I was playing against the AI. But typically this is how you would want to end your first turn. You use the Apollousa negates. Depending on the card, you can just shotgun them as you're learning, but as you get more familiar with the game, it's going to become easier to distinguish what you should try to remove. And the number one strategy for removing Apollousa is your opponent will bait out a couple of her negates, because she loses 800 attack every time she does it, and then they will proceed to normal summon a monster and attempt to crash over her. This is where Tri-Brigade Revolt comes into play, and I'll keep talking and I'll see if the AI actually does what I want it to do. But I'm going to present it the first turn, so I'm just going to end. So as soon as they try to attack over her, that's when you typically want to use your Revolt. And you'll use Revolt, and Revolt again is the reason why this deck is so incredibly strong. Well, if you get Lightning Stormed or Feather Dustered, then you're just out of luck. It's going to be a little bit of a harder game. So I'll keep talking and I won't explain what I would do in this line. Maybe I'll show some gameplay, but that's what makes this deck so strong. Revolt is going to let you special summon Shurag and all those banished Tri-Brigade monsters, which is going to get you Nerval's effect to search. It's going to get you a banish during your opponent's turn, and then you're going to activate Kit last in the chain just to do something called chain blocking and make sure that your opponent can't disrupt your search or your banish. So the order before that doesn't matter. You'd also is a good idea to special summon the Bearbrum off your Revolt. You can't summon the Virgin because she wasn't summoned naturally, but you can summon the Bearbrum, which was summoned normally just by regular link summoning, and she's also going to draw you Revolt. So just be sure that Kit's effect is last here. But again, this is an extremely strong board. If your opponent doesn't do anything, and say like an Eldritch player and just sets everything face down, you're going to want to wait to activate this until the end phase. So once you see this marker over here during the turn 3 main one, you want it to say end, and during that end phase you're going to activate it. That way your opponent can't keep playing after you activate it. They've already given up their turn, they can activate any quick effects or end phase effects, but they can't continue playing. And that is the basic bread and butter of Tri-Brigade. That's what I outlined in the little diagram, and that's what you always want to do. It may sound intimidating now, it may sound complicated, but it's very simple, it's very repetitive, and personally, as someone this is their second favorite deck of all time playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's very fun for me to just play these kind of consistent decks. Okay, perfect. So it took a bit of restarting, but I finally found the dead hand that you typically don't want to open with. I'm going first, so my Zoo is completely useless. I can end on a Trident, but again, this is just last case situation because it's gonna make my Zeus dead if I. It is still Zeus still works, but he's only gonna get 1 destruction effect as opposed to 2 because of the numbers of Zeus I run, and Kit doesn't really do something crazy on her own. But if you happen to open dead with either just Nerval and Kid in hand and any other beast, be it a repeated name, but you don't have an access to the full combo, we can still go for the suboptimal combo line. And it doesn't feel great to do, and it's going to cost you your entire hand, but it's better than just ending on nothing or something weak, maybe a couple of hand traps, and risking just losing the game. This really is a last resort desperation play, but it is worth it. Again, we're going to go down the same chain of events, except we're going to be normal summoning either Kit or Nerval and linking it off into Almirage. Almirage's effect doesn't matter, it's just to get the card into the graveyard. But then we're going to go down to the next one. If it's Nerval, it's Nerval. If you're starting on Nerval, then you're just going to immediately go and grab yourself a Keras. And you need Keras here because he needs to be able to special summon himself. Otherwise, you're just going to be ending on a board with just Almirage. Now, if you're doing the desperation play and you get hand trapped at any point before this, then you're kind of just dead, but we're already losing the game, so it's something we've just accepted at this point. So you can go for 3 cards here and just make an Apollosa and pass, and because I have Revolt in hand already, that's actually an extremely strong play. I would just go into Rugal here, summon Apollosa, and I would have Almirage, whose effect he can destroy himself in order to protect any other monster you have on the field from destruction effects. But I'm going to pretend that this hand is even worse and Revolt isn't in hand, and say I have all my bricks, like I have my Driver, I have another Tri-Brigade name that I can't activate, like another Kit, or I have, say, my Twin Twisters, depending on what I'm running. So pretending that this hand is worse than it is, even though it is already not a very optimal hand, I'm going to go ahead and banish 2, but instead of bringing out Furgit, like we had earlier, we're going to bring out the Bear Brum. Now here, Bear Brum has an effect much like Furgit's, difference being is a lot more expensive. So we're gonna go ahead, and it doesn't really matter what you get rid of in your hand here, because the sad part about this combo is that it's gonna cost you your entire hand. Now here, just be very sure to summon a name you haven't used already, obviously. So you always want to look out for that with this deck, because it is very easy to misplay and summon a name you already had. Now here, it cost me my entire hand, and you might think I still have 1 card left, and that's 1 disruption, but you have to remember I'm going to give this up right now for the Revolt. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to still get something nice. I'm going to get myself an Apollosa at the end of this with 3 negates, and I'm going to end on my Revolt. But instead of the optimal line that I showed earlier, where I get to end the board with this and like 3 cards in hand, this time I'm ending with Apollosa, Revolt, and 0 cards in hand, which is brutal, but it's what you sometimes have to do. And you have Almirage at least to protect your Apollosa from a Raigeki, from a Afterburners, from any destruction effect really. But again, this is a lot riskier of a board because you're really just at the mercy of your opponent not being able to do anything too crazy, and this being enough to stop them. But if you do manage to survive, again, Revolt is going to get you Shureg out, it's going to get you the initial draw from Nerval resummoned, and it's going to get you another draw if you successfully summon the Shureg, because when he dies, he's going to draw a card as well. Also, Now, important to remember is that when you try to activate Revolt, you cannot legally resolve Revolt on this board. You're going to have to shotgun the Almirage before you can activate Revolt, so don't panic, be like, oh, why isn't my Revolt working? It's because the Link monsters can only be summoned to zones, the special zones, or where the arrows point, and all your arrows are blocked off currently because Apollos is hogging them, and her arrows point downwards and upwards, and there is no space there. So you'll see Revolt can't be activated. I'll just shotgun Almirage, and then in the same I will create a chain link here, and you can do this during your opponent's turn or at any time. You could just resolve Revolt normally, you just need to be sure to use that Almirage effect first. Alright, now to quickly show the line going second, it's basically the exact same combo with any 2 beasts in hand, or any 1 beast and 5 formation tanky, or if you already have tanky in the field and just happen to have the 2 beasts in hand, you can get exact lethal. Actually, this is more of a finishing the game kind of play. You can just do it going second. It really depends on how substantial your opponent's board is and how badly you really want to end the game. So there's nothing in my graveyard or banish that's relevant or beast-wise. I just had to skip the turn against the AI because it's kind of hard on an automated simulator to get the exact cards you need, but we're going to go ahead and do the same familiar combo line we were familiar with. Grab the Fractal, and again, referring to the same order of operation with this deck, send the Kit. Then we're going to go ahead and use Kit effect to send the Nerval. And because we already have Cuirass in hand, we're going to go ahead and treat ourselves a little bit, get something a little different, get something a little sweet. We're going to grab Fractal instead. I don't know if Fractal exactly would be sweet. Fractal kind of scares me, but you know, that's its own problem. So we go ahead and pop Fractal effect, going again for the same line of play that we've done. No, sorry, we're going to go ahead and banish 3 this time. And we're going to go ahead and grab Rugal here, just because we're going to use them simply to link away. And then this is what I mean about having the second beast in hand, because you do need to be able to ditch it for Cuirass. Again, we could have just grabbed Cuirass at the end of the chain instead of grabbing Fractal, but we already had him in hand. Then we're going to go ahead, link these off into Access Code Talker. Nice and simple. I never realized Access Code Talker had legs in his art. That is deeply disturbing to me in a variety of ways. But I'm going to go ahead and be sure to apply Access Code's buff. Throw in Rugal's debuff just because why not, I guess. There's really nothing to lose. And then here we're going to go ahead and summon 2. And that's going to go ahead and be sure to not banish your Rugal here, because you need him in the graveyard in order to use that Access Code Talker pop, because he does need cards in the banish pile. If not, he will just simply destroy something on board. And here you could see Access Code plus the Warrior is exact lethal. We can go ahead and use Warrior's effect to get rid of any card, really. Obviously you'd want to play it safe, but because I just want to end this game, I'm going to assume my opponent has nothing. It would have been a lot safer to just get rid of the Cuirass. Again, it's exact lethal without it. And we go ahead and push for a game. Nice and simple. Again, there's various lines you could take here, but this is just one of the easiest ones and one you'll have come up very often. And then a very basic line that anyone who played Yu-Gi-Oh when this was completely dominant knows is the Zoo combo. It's very basic, but just in case anybody hasn't seen it, you just normal summon a Zoo. A lot of times you don't want to even use the effect over here because you don't want to risk it getting negated and destroyed. Then you immediately go into Borbo to not overextend. Borbo can attack directly, and then double A Zeus can be summoned from your extra deck as long as an XZ attack. Doesn't matter if it was the XZ you're trying to overlay on top of or not, but then you just go ahead and attack. Doesn't matter if you attack for 0 attack or you attack for 1600, the same effect's going to go off. Be sure that Drident is the last one you overlay, just in case they try to hit you with a stun late. That way you can at least have Drident effect go off in a panic before they destroy your board, and you at least get a little bit of value out of it. But then you go ahead and just overlay Zeus. Defense position's a lot stronger typically because you already attacked, and he has equal stats, and then you could just choose to use his effect now or later. Zeus is not a once per turn, and it is not a once per chain like Apollousa, so you can go ahead and just panic nuke the board even through an Apollousa negate. Alright, so I hope that was helpful. I hope that helped you understand the deck. Again, I hope the infographic was helpful at the very least if it's the first time that you're seeing this deck. But now I'm going to break down the deck list, and I'm not going to try to not waste too much time. I know that was very fast. I know that could have been very confusing, so seriously, if you have any questions, just drop a question down in the comments, and I will do my absolute best to help out and help you understand the question that you have, because I do feel like I know this deck fairly well at this point. So I'm going to break down the deck list, and I'm going to go a little fast just so this video isn't too long. But the driver and gamma package, I just think it's a really strong hand trap. It's also very cheap to craft, but a lot of times people will ash you, they will gamma you, they will try to stop you early, because it is correct to stop this deck early, either right when you send Fractal or the second that kit hits the graveyard. And if people do that, you can just hit them with a gamma, or if they try to max you too early for God knows what reason, you hit them with a gamma. And that's also why I run the Omega. I don't think Omega is optimal in this deck. I think it's better to either run another Zoodiac name you don't have yet, or to run a second Virgit, but Omega has come up a lot for me, and even though he's a win more card, he just locks down those games. If you Omega on your turn and you summon the big Omega, you're guaranteed to win. So that's why I think that's a really good card. The Tri-Brigades are all super standard. You need these in the deck if you're playing any version of Tri-Brigade. There's no question about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You need 3 Kit, 3 Nerval, 3 Fractal. 3 Karaz is debatable. A lot of people run 2. I think he's very important at 3, just because it lets me keep chain blocking. It lets me make sure that I consistently see him in my opening hand, because he's such a good extender, and he's just really strong. The Zoodiacs are... oh, let me go in order. So that was the 3 Tri-Brigades: Nerval, Karaz, Kit, and Fractal. I hate when people jump around deck lists and you can't find the cards they're talking about. Anyways, then we have the hand trap 3 Maxi. Maxi is currently the best hand trap in the game. We have it at 3 because we're playing in OCG format. If you're not running Maxi and you're able to fit Maxi and other hand traps in the deck, what are you doing? 3 Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom has been dethroned as the best hand trap, but Ash Blossom is extremely strong. It hits every single deck. There is very few decks, especially very few good decks, that will not be hit by Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is just very generic, therefore very good. We have the 3 of the Zoodiacs, just because you can pick any zoo names really. It doesn't really matter which Zoodiac you run. I just personally like these, and I like Ram for the protection, because he does have an effect that never comes up, but he is able to disrupt a trap card if he's used as material for an XZ. But the 3 Zoodiacs, just because going second, especially running a card like Droplets, summoning a Zoo, and going into Divine Arsenal Zeus is just such a strong play, because it will clean the board. If your opponent's card says cannot be destroyed, or unaffected by something, it doesn't matter, because Zeus doesn't destroy, Zeus doesn't target, Zeus just sends everything to your graveyard, to their graveyard, and your graveyard, because it targets both their board and your board. So Zeus is just extremely powerful, and I can't imagine running this deck without Zeus unless you're running Bird Up, but personally I'm not a fan of Bird Up. Then we run the 2 of Desires, just because sometimes you have bricky hands. You do run a lot of bricks in the deck, like Driver. So Desires really just helps fix those hands. Statistically it is correct to run Desires at 3, but I don't like statistics, and they don't like me, because I always Desires into the other Desires. So I think 2 is good enough, and this deck's consistent enough that you're not going to be crying every game because you need that 1 extra card. This deck usually goes off. That's what it does. It's consistent. The 1 of Lightning Storm and the 1 of Solemn Judgment. I would much rather have these be Solemn Strikes, but again, the game is pretty new, and these are very cheap cards that most players should have, since you should be buying the bundles that have Ash, that has Lightning Storm, and that has Solemn, just because they're great staples and they're very cheap. If you don't like the 2 Solemn Strike, you can run instead Twin Twisters, or you could run just other generic good cards. Twin Twisters is something that I think is very good in this deck, just because it discards. But again, we're just running this because they're solid and their budget. Then we have Fire Formation Tanky. Not everyone's running at this at 3. I don't understand why. Tanky is literally Fractal or Zoodiac. If you're going first, you grab Fractal, boom, full combo. If you're going second, you have an insane board you're going up against, you grab a Zeus, boom, you win. If not, you grab Fractal going second, and boom, you go full combo. Tanky is insanely strong. There's a reason why this card was limited in the physical card game. You should be running 3. Droplets is a bit more questionable. Droplets really is in here for the Drytron matchup. I know that there's a lot more Eldritch, but Droplet is just gonna hit everything except Eldritch. Eldritch is a very strong deck, and if you really want to counter Eldritch, go ahead and run more Lightning Storms, run a Feather Duster, run Twin Twisters in this spot, or Red Reboot. Red Reboot's amazing in this deck. But again, if you're going first against Eldritch, you're already super likely to win. So why would I tech more against that matchup when I could make my deck better against the overall general amount of decks that I face, and then if I face Eldritch, I'll just leave it up to the 50-50 of hoping I go first and just win that way. Impermanence is just a really good card because again, you can either set it if you go first, or if you don't go first, it's activatable from hand and just stops monster effects. It's insanely strong against the mirror if you play another Tri-Brigade, because you just wait for them to activate their effects on the field to banish, they pay that cost, and then you impermanence them, and then they're sad. Revolt is the reason this deck is so strong. Revolt makes Tri-Brigade tier 1, but again, I don't think you need to run it at 3 because ever since they added Bear Brum to the game, it's searchable, so you really don't need a brick and just open multiple Revolts. It's fine at 2. And then we have Imperial Order. You need to run Imperial Order. Imperial Order is the best card in the game. It's useless against Eldritch, but Imperial Order wins you games you shouldn't win. Why play a game of Yu-Gi-Oh when you could just flip Imperial Order and then automatically win against half the decks if they either draw a bad hand or they're just happening to play something like Sky Striker? Just play Imperial Order and just win the game, those games you see it. Then we have the Zoo package. That, again, is just used to overlay one on top of each other because zoos have an effect like that, and like you saw earlier in the video, we run, doesn't matter what names you run for these two, except you do need to run Borbo, and then I do prefer the Trident just because in case you get Nibiru'd, at least you can use Trident's effect. The Trident should be the last one you're summoning to pop one thing on the board, but again, she's really not necessary, and if you're running on a budget, you can skip out on Trident. Then we have Zeus, obviously. We have Almirage for those bricky hands. You need Almirage. Double Dragon Lords is replaceable. You don't technically need him. His effect really only comes up one in every 20 games, one every 10 games. Realistically, even though it seems like it would come up a lot more, it really doesn't come up that often, at least in the Master Duel meta right now. So you can replace it for a Svergit, but it's just that tiny bit of consistency you're paying for that sometimes it saves you. I think it's worth running it. Fergit and Bear Brum, obviously, they're part of the core combo. The Doom Eagle is really strong just for that huge attack boost and because he can close out games. Rugal, the Silver Sheller, honestly, if I would, after Omega, Rugal is the card I would be most likely to cut. Rugal really doesn't come up too often and really is a replaceable card, but he does come up semi-often. So I guess we keep him in the deck. And I think it is correct to keep him in the deck. Apollosa, again, it should be your end board every single first turn. She's insanely strong. You need to run Apollosa. Access Code closes out games. He is your finisher. And Shureg is necessary at 2. Some people run him at 1. But then you're really sacrificing your mid-range game. And there's other cards I'd rather give up first. And that's the whole rundown of the deck list. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you'd like to see me turn Master Duel decks into like physical copies, because again, the basis of my channel is like showing the pricing of cards, I thought I'd take Master Duel decks and show how much it would cost to like buy them in person. Maybe that'll be fun. Or if you have any suggestions, like you hated this is the worst experience in your life, you hated sitting through me talking with a bad mic quality, like be sure to tell me. Or if you liked anything, also tell me. Thank you, and hope you enjoy Tri-Brigade.